Okay, good morning, everyone. I hope you guys can hear me. How's everybody doing? Good morning. See, for a change, I am on time. I think this is on. Yes. Justin Matthews says, I don't want to wake up with Saurabh Pant. Thanks, man. That's been my life experience for a long time in any case. So I completely agree with that sentiment. I hope everybody's good.
Yeah, we're fine, sir.
Sorry, by mistake. Sorry, I just switched off your video by mistake, sir. So I'll just bring you on in 2 minutes, sir. Just just to give a couple of introductions. I hope everybody's fine. One second. This is streaming in multiple places. Good morning to everybody. Harshit says on time. OP Neeraj Krishnan. Good morning. Kajol Agarwal. Good morning. Maya Shinoy. Good morning. Just want to announce a couple of things before I bring on my very esteemed guest for today. Um, uh, it's been a very fun week. I just want to announce what's happening in the forthcoming episodes. On Sunday we have Siddharth Dudeja. We have a bunch of other people. One second, this is weird. Okay. On Sunday we have Siddharth Dijeja, which is tomorrow, and who else is there with him? I've completely forgotten now. Sumaira Sheikh and one more person. We're going to be talking about basically the silly news that's happening just to make people feel happy about themselves. On Tuesday, I have completely blanked out on who's there, and then on Thursday we have Chetan Bhagat. So there's a fun lineup coming up of people, and it's going to be great for all of you who are sort of donating on Instamojo and PayPal to keep this running. I really, really appreciate it. I'm going to read out your names tomorrow because I don't want to keep my guest waiting too long today. Very esteemed gentleman, very, very illustrious career. See, I know how to say big words, guys. Jayesh Tripathi, good morning, sir, and everyone. Nishta Chaudhary, Team Sorabh OP. I'm just going to tell you what is going to happen today is that usually the way this is structured is that I try and take questions from you guys. I think today we're going to try and take questions a little bit towards the end. However, if you're enjoying the content, rather than asking questions, just if you're enjoying the content, feel free to give comments and happy things on Super Chat. I will try and take questions in about roughly about half an hour. And please like the stream, guys. I have been told to ask you guys to like the stream so that things get going faster. So please like the stream and subscribe to this channel if you're just here for the first time. And again, memberships have started. In case you want to know, we have level 1 membership, which gets you emojis and badges and all the rest of that stuff. Level 2 gets you one YouTube live with members, which we had yesterday, which is super fun. We had about, I think, about 20 members, which is great fun. We had a really long chat for an hour and 15 minutes. And then level 3, which is besties, gets you minimum of 2 open mics a month, as well as in this particular month you get tickets for my live Zoom shows. So that's for this particular month. You get 4 shows, which is a lot. The next open mic is happening on Monday at 8 p.m. In case you don't know what an open mic is, it's where comedians test out their jokes for the first time. That's about it. I'm going to introduce my guest. I'm very excited to have him on board. In case you've never heard about this gentleman, let me give an introduction. Lieutenant General Zameer Uddin Shah. He's got an illustrious career. He was involved. First of all, his family's been involved in soldiering for 200 years. That's incredible. He was involved in the 1971 war, the one in Bangladesh. He was the vice chancellor of AMU. He was the defense attaché to Saudi Arabia. It's a really ridiculously stellar career. So without further ado, I want to introduce my guest for today. Please give a wonderful round of applause to Lieutenant General Zameer Uddin Shah. Hello, sir. Welcome.
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind, sir. Jai Hind. Sir, first of all, I have to comment, you look really nice, like very well dressed and turned out. As soon as we're doing the tech, my managers messaged me saying, Sorabh, please wear a shirt.
Okay.
Just to make sure everything's good. How are you doing, sir?
Okay, I'm very well. I'm looking forward to a chat with you this morning.
And I, by the way, want to thank you because you made the ultimate sacrifice, which is you delayed the golf. And as a son of an avid golfer, I completely understand how much effort that is.
Time management is taught by golfers. On the day when you got pressure work, don't play. So you got those additional 4 hours which you never catered for.
What's your handicap, sir, on the golf course?
Oh, I'm 14. I play a respectable round.
Wow. 14 is a great handicap. I think mine is about 403. I think that's roughly what my handicap is. So okay, I'll get down to it. I also want to talk about Sir's book, which is called the Sarkari Musalman. I'm over 80% through to it. Didn't finish it, but again, very genuinely interesting book. There's like I was reading the chapter about your travels through the Middle East and stories about Saudi Arabia, and then there's just so much to talk about. So I'm going to try and divide this conversation into sort of a historical perspective. The first thing I definitely want to talk to you about is your soldiering family, which is 200 years of soldiering in your family. And I think your son has continued the sort of legacy. So I would love to know more about the soldiering family.
Well, my family has been soldiering. Uh, Earlier when we were in Afghanistan in the 19th century, we were
Right,
soldiering. And because of that, my great great grandfather was driven out from Afghanistan and came over to India.
right,
And there the British gave us succor and recruited large portions of my family into the army. In those days, there were no Indian officers, so we were what you call junior commissioned officers now. But in those days, they were called Sardars, Sardar Saab. So the family fought in 1857, supported the British in the mutiny. Now that's something which my kids find it difficult to swallow, but I gave them to understand that not every Indian supported the war for independence, or what you call the mutiny, what the British call. There were like the Sikhs, the Dogras, the Gurkhas, and a whole lot of others who remained loyal to the army in which they were serving. So that is the reason. And I always tell them that in 1857, there were no national loyalties. There were loyalties only to your tribe. And my tribe felt that their interests would best be served by remaining loyal to the army which they were serving in. So that's exactly what happened. Then subsequently, a large number of relatives fought in the First World War. You can see the photographs in the book.
yeah.
Some were left in foreign fields, but a large number of them came back, and the photograph is there in the book. Then subsequently, a large number of uncles.
Right here,
So
this one, right? This is the one you're talking about.
these are relatives who served in the First World War, and fortunately, beards are in fashion. All of them, you notice. I'm surprised that Sorabh doesn't wear a beard, but the entire cricket team, Indian cricket team, has made beards very, very fashionable. And it was in those times, 1857 and subsequently First World War, till the end of the First World War, beards were in fashion. Then a large number of uncles served in the Second World War. They fought in Burma. My father, who was a civilian officer with the 14th Army, was posted in Kohima during the siege of Kohima across the tennis court. So our association has been very deep. We've been deeply embedded into the armed forces. My son-in-law is a commodore in the Navy. My son joined the army. He was my ADC. My brother-in-law, my cousins, everybody is in the army. We feel that we should serve the nation which gives us bread and butter. I mean, that is our policy. You should serve the country in which you live.
It's a very nice thought, and it's a very. I mean, first of all, I want to comment on my beard. I used to have a beard, sir, but the problem is that it just looks very lopsided with the current hair that I have. It looks like a tennis ball that was shaved on one end, so I just stopped maintaining the beard.
Right.
Uh, but
I
but
understand.
but I'm kind of curious about. I speak to so many people who are from the armed forces, and there tends to be a sort of a passing on of the baton with regard to staying in whichever form of the armed forces suits them. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that continues and like in your particular case?
See, it's a question of family tradition. And the men really honor and respect third or fourth generation soldiers. Like when my son joined the regiment, the men always used to go to him, "Ah, nahi, nahi, saab." Your father used to do it like this. So he constantly had to live up to the little reputation which I had made amongst the men. But he earned their love and respect. I mean, old soldiers who were now senior JSTOs and others were recruits during my time when I was commanding. So they gave him all the backing and helped him a lot. So we follow traditionally the path, and of course, serving in your father's regiment gives you many other privileges. For example, when they were looking for an ADC, my son got the chance. His name was forwarded to me, and I didn't want to discriminate against my son. I said, if the commanding officer is offering him, I'll accept him as my ADC. And he did a very fine job. Yeah, of course, he always says that was a difficult assignment for him, calling me sir and my wife ma'am in public. But he did a good job, and I'm very proud of the young man.
So, but your son was your ADC for how long, sir?
For almost a year and a half,
Wow.
while I commanded before.
So how different was the sort of official duty versus the, like, when did the calling you sir and your wife ma'am change, like when he came back home, or what is the
No, no. See, the only time he was allowed to give up that, the playing soldier was when he had meals with us. Meals were at home, but he lived separately in the ADC's house. He
right?
didn't share the lodgings with us, and of course, he accompanied me wherever I went. But whenever I took a helicopter flight, I always made him sit in another helicopter for
Right.
reasons which you know very well. It was
Yeah.
for safety's sake. I mean, two of us should not be casualty at the same time. That was the how I looked at it. So this is how the traditions in the army continue. I'm glad that we are fostering this old relationship. I mean, we give priority to the sons of JSTOs and other ranks also to join the same unit.
Hmm.
And then it's very, very, you know what the British did? How did they conquer India?
Hmm.
They conquered India not by British troops. They conquered India with the help of Indian troops.
Yeah.
Now, who did the Indian soldier give loyalty to? Not to the king and not to the king of England or to the country of England. He gave his loyalty to his regiment. And a regiment comprised of soldiers, one unit comprised of soldiers from one particular area. So if a chap ran away in battle, it would spread around so and so in the Buzdal. It would
Yeah.
not be hidden. And that's how it continued. Now, Indian soldiers owed loyalty only to their regiment. And when the regiment said, attack, capture so and so, they would do it, irrespective of who was there. That's how they conquered the whole of India by the regimental system. It is a very, very strong system. We are still following it in the Indian Army. Unfortunately, the Americans gave up the regimental system after the First World War. I think it was their big loss. The Brits still keep the regimental system, and a lot of armies, the Pakistan Army has the regimental system. So you are bonded to the regiment in which you are born and in which you hope to serve later on.
So I'm just curious about something you just said right now about the Americans not following the regimental system. So you think that's what do you think is the negative side to that particular system for them?
Well, there are no traditions to live up to. You are
Right.
in 123 regiment. Like I was in the 170 mountain regiment called the Veer Rajputs. So I always say with pride, I'm from the Veer Rajputs. But I would find it difficult to say I'm serving in 123 regiment. It conveys really nothing. So the regimental system, uh, it may be considered backward, but it is a very fine system. After Operation Blue Star, there was an attempt by the Indian armies to also give up the regimental system,
Hmm.
have mixed regiments. But we experimented with it. The experiment failed and reverted back to the regimental system. Now, the strength of a regiment system is that people of the same community serve together.
Yeah.
They have the same food habits. They have the same deity in the regimental mandir. They have the same characteristics, the same jokes. So there are a lot of advantages in the regimental system.
Okay. I'm curious about also. I want to take this back right to the end. One of the recurring themes in this book is about camels. Camels tend to pop up a lot in your entire career, right from where you were sort of stationed initially, and all the rest of that stuff, as well as the that one particular incident in Saudi Arabia, which is obviously a scary one. Oh, sorry, not in Saudi Arabia, on the en route to Saudi Arabia. So I'm curious about, you said that you wanted to be in a mounted regiment and all the rest of that
Yes,
story.
see, I was interested in pursuing a career in polo, into which I had been attracted to the regiment. And in those days, we had pack regiments, horse pack with mules. And so I opted for the mule pack regiments, hoping that I'd get 2 or 3 chargers and play golf. But Army headquarters, in their wisdom, posted me to a newly raised camel regiment. This was for special operations in the Thar Desert. I joined the regiment and I helped. I'm a half vet myself because I attended courses on veterinary aid and other things. And I helped raise, I bought hundreds of camels for my regiment and continued serving with them. Later on in life, when I was a general during Op Parakram, we thought of re-raising a few camel troops. And I was given the task because I was experienced. But then Op Parakram ended. But camels were noiseless. We could traverse vast distances noiselessly and really surprise the adversary. So they are an asset. But in this present age, and this was proved by General Jacob, when it was being considered whether we should keep the regiment or reorganize it into a towed regiment. So he asked me to select. I was a votary of the camels. He was not. He was a modern general. So he challenged me. He told me select the worst dhora. Dhora means the sand dune.
Right.
And if I can't traverse it, you will continue with the regiment. But if I traverse it, that's the end, and you will get motorized. So I recce'd the whole of the area around Jaisalmer, found a dhora where I was convinced that General Jacob would not be able to traverse. Anyway, at the appointed day, he landed up with his ADC with Jeep fitted with balloon tires. These are very enormous tires. And with the help of balloon tires, he climbed right to the top. So that was the end of the camels. And of course, we had to bid them goodbye. But in a way, it was fortunate because Sorabh, it used to take me 5 days of hard riding to move from Bikaner to Pokhran, where we used to do field firing, and it would have taken me another 2 days to reach Jaisalmer. So you're talking of cold start. Cold start should happen within 24 hours. It would have taken us 7 days to reach our operational regiment. So camels really, in the modern age, are in congruity and were rightly disposed of.
I'm just imagining a really competitive camel who's like, I'm going to show this vehicle what I'm made of. Just a camel trying to prove a point to somebody. But okay, so I'm curious about like I read a lot of things in this book, and I realized that a lot of people, in fact, most people in the armed forces, like riding for 7 days is not considered normal for like most civilians. And there's so much stuff which involves, like, whether it's being stationed at the border without any any you know people around you for company, and hours spent in whatever, in terrible conditions and all that stuff. Where do you think this sort of, I wouldn't say normalization of dealing with tough conditions, but what does the army teach you to sort of conquer all those elements and yourself?
Oh, we spend a lot of time in training.
Right.
And you may not have other officer friends, because you may be isolated, but the men become your friends. I mean, they become
Right.
part of your family. And let me also tell you, the army lays a lot of importance on games.
Hmm.
These are exceedingly important. They relieve a lot of pressure. And that is why, right through my career, I've encouraged games, horsemanship, and other things. These are prerequisites. And of course, uh, it gives you a lot of time to explore. I did. If you see a lot of books on the Northeast and the mountains were written by military officers who had explored the environment, young husband and others who went on to Tibet and other things. So there are enough ways of keeping people busy and happy. Of course, you can invite misery because you can be miserable even in paradise. But I think that if you look at the other way, at the positive aspects, I mean, when I was a young officer and shikar was permitted in Pokhran and those areas, I was constantly, it was the best training ground for shikar. Of course, then I became a member of the World Wildlife. I became their monitor in the Northeast, in Ladakh. When I quit hunting and put my guns into deep preservative, now I am a wildlife watcher. And I'm, again, because there's so few of the wildlife left that we need to preserve them for future generations.
Okay, I want to cut to, of course, the Indo-Pak War in 1971. I was actually doing some rereading about it, and it's quite interesting how I mean, is essentially the entire war for a lot of people who are younger, and I'm sure you know way more about this than I do. It's essentially started with a genocide. I mean, there was a pretty severe genocide which was. Perpetuated in East Pakistan. I think about 9 million people were killed, and there was also uh, a concept which I had read about ages back, and I was reminded of it again, which was genocidal rape, which is I think 200,000 to 400,000 women were allegedly raped in that area. I'm curious that when you hear these kind of stories and you're called in to sort of intervene and sort of be part of that particular war, is any part of you sort of driven by a sense of justice, or is it just following orders? I'm just curious about that.
No, no, it is totally injustice. See,
Right.
it has always been. It's a lesson which I've learned early in life that an insurrection or an insurgency cannot be resolved by strong arm tactics.
Right.
Is the mistake the Pakistani did.
Hmm.
So millions of people were killed, and 6 million fled across the border into India.
Yeah.
And we could not take the pressure of these 6 million refugees, and that is why we were driven to war. And I've always been advocating that the it is to be a male fist in an iron glove,
Right.
in a velvet glove, a male
Hmm.
fist in a velvet glove. That means for the bulk of the population, it is the velvet glove. You massage them, you look after them, you take care of their needs, you don't pillage and rape. And for the insurgents, the male fist.
Hmm.
But the male fist is only for the insurgents, not for the vast bulk of the population. That is the biggest mistake the Pakistanis made, and that's why they lost East Pakistan, now renamed Bangladesh.
I would love to hear some stories. I mean, I've read a bunch of stories and also listened to previous interviews of you about the 1971 war. I think there was one where you had an interaction with Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw, who's obviously a legend in Indian sort of Indian armed forces stories. But aside from that, if there's any other stories you'd like to share with us from the 1971 war, I'd love to hear those.
Yes, yes. The first thing is the Sam Manekshaw's briefing to the entire division. This was in October 1971. We were all wondering what's going to happen. Is there going to be a war? Is there not going to be a war?
Right.
Anyway, the entire officers of the division were collected on a sand dune. There was a table laid out with an army issued blanket and a microphone. And we were told that General Manekshaw is going to address you. Anyway, we heard his helicopter come in. We saw him come in. He says, Jai Hind, good morning. He brushed aside the chair, used it to climb up on the table, stood with his hands on his hips. His address was very brief. He gave us 4 points. He said, boys, I'm sending you across. Ensure victory. There are three things I want you to remember. First is prisoners of war will not be ill treated. Second, he said there'll be no plunder or booty taking. And third, he said keep away from the begums. By that he meant Pakistani women. Then he jumped off the table, had tea with us, and flew off. So we knew very well what was in the offing. I mean, we had planned for it. Anyway, what happened was that on 4th of December, we
Hmm.
were to kick off from a place called Tanot, which is just short of Jaisalmer. And our objective was a town called Rahim Yar Khan in Pakistan, Sindh. It was a nerve center, a control center, and a large cantonment. But what happened on the night of 3rd, 4th, before we launched the attack, the Pakistanis attacked our post at Longewala.
Right.
Longewala was to the west, about 30 kilometers to the west of Tanot. The battery, which I commanded later, was deployed for the defense of Longewala. So we were told, okay, forget about the move up north, veer westward. So the whole division veered westward. We were a sitting duck for the Pakistani Air Force because there were streams and streams of vehicles heading for Longewala. Anyway, we reached Longewala on 4th. The battery was firing, and we fired in support of the Longewala post. The next morning, we called in the Air Force. What had happened is that the Pakistanis had surrounded the Longewala post. Major Chandpuri, who was commanding the company of the Punjabis, did not lose his cool, neither did his commanding officer at Sadewala, Colonel Khurshid Hussain. Of course, depicted later in the movie Border in ambivalent light, which the army represented against. Anyway, the tanks were all around. We were firing, and there was a fire fence which we had put to keep away dogs and cattle. The Pakistanis thought it was a minefield, and so they stopped for the night. The next morning, the Air Force came in and destroyed about 30 Pakistani tanks.
Oh.
In I mean, it was they were going up fireworks, which you see in Diwali, and that was the end of the Pakistani offensive, and they started retreating. We followed them, and then we came in about 15, 20 kilometers into Pakistani Sindh, where when the ceasefire was declared. Now, the interesting, two or three interesting episodes. One was we attacked a fort called Islamgarh prior to our thrust towards Rahim Yar Khan. The guns of my regiment breached the walls of the fort of Islamgarh, and next morning, the Subedar who had taken part appeared in front of me with the Quran Sharif. And he said, Sab, I thought this would be desecrated, so I thought you are the best keeper of the Quran. I still have it with me, and probably whenever things are right, I'll probably return it to the mosque in Islamgarh.
I hate to interrupt you there, but in fact, one of the things I read in the book was that I had written a note saying, "I hope he's returned it." Is one of the notes I
No,
read there.
I haven't got a chance. I've never visited
Yeah,
Pakistan.
yeah,
But
yeah.
when things improve,
Yes,
which I'm sure economic compulsions will force us
right,
to better relationship with our complete neighborhood.
right.
We need to have that. Uh, the uh, our regional grouping has been the only place where it's been a failure. Other groupings like ASEAN and others, the European Commission and others have been a success. Our South Asian grouping has been a failure, and I do hope. Now, one night
Yes, sir.
when we were firing, three khaki-clad uh, soldiers came into the gun position and put up their hands. I said, don't fire, don't shoot. We are Bengali officers. So we surrounded them, disarmed them. They were deserters from the Pakistan army who had deserted and found their way into our gun position. So we treated them well, we interrogated them, and then sent them to higher headquarters where they were subsequently pushed on to join the Mukti Bahini. So these were very, very interesting times. I, of course, grew a beard because there was shortage of water. I wanted to conserve the one water bottle which we used to get every day, and I didn't want to waste it on shaving. Some other officers did that, but that was life.
I'm curious about a couple of things actually. One thing is that I think what you mentioned earlier was about the pillaging and all that stuff. Do you? I mean, having dealt with soldiers up like so up close, do you think that there is an instinct or there are a couple of bad eggs in either war and either side in whatever army? I'm not saying that it's only on the Indian side, who have a sort of temptation to sort of pillage or anything like that, and does that need to be quelled, or what is the
Yes, that's a very strong, urge
right?
to pocket something. I mean, these are booty taking has been a custom, but it's more to do with mercenaries
Right.
and not with regular soldiers.
Hmm.
The army comes down very heavily on anybody. I mean, there were a couple of soldiers who were trying
Hmm.
to sneak away weapons
Hmm.
and
Hmm. Hmm.
caught and court-martialed and punished. So the army really came down heavily on anybody plundering or pillaging. Disciplined soldiers should have, I mean, they should not be tempted. And of
Right.
course, the sword of Damocles is always hanging. If you plunder and if you are caught, the army is not going to forgive you.
Okay, I just want to take a few chats, and then I actually have a couple more questions about exactly this. Just a few people watching. About 600 people are watching right now. Please like the stream so that more people can join in and listen to this very interesting conversation. Maya Shinoy has said you are amazing. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate that. And please like the button. Please hit the like button is what I meant to say. Okay, so there was I think when I was talking to Lieutenant General S.S. Panag as well and reading your book as well, there's a couple of points where I thought that was there ever any situation during the 1971 war where you thought that the tides of war could have sort of gone in Pakistan's favor and that they made some mistakes or anything like that, which uh, led to our victory there, or
Well, if this column which surrounded and wasted time at Longewala, if
hmm.
they had pushed on ahead, they would have come right up to Jaisalmer.
Right.
The battle axe division would have had no recourse but to turn back. So this was fortunately they violated the principles of war. That means
Hmm.
the infantry and the armor should never get separated. In this case, the armor, I think it was 22 cavalry of the Pakistan, which uh, outstripped the movement of the infantry. So they were without infantry support, and so they fell prey to the air. Otherwise, now let me tell you about Bangladesh. I was a staff officer to General Jacob, and I was privy to a lot of correspondence between him and the Director General of Military Operations at that time, who was a close friend. The initial aim of the operations in Bangladesh was salami slicing. That means we wanted to slice off portions of Bangladesh towards the Indian border and declare an independent Pakistan, an independent Bangladesh. It was General Jacob who advocated the strategy of blitzkrieg. That's
Hmm.
what the Germans did, and that's what the Israelis followed. Incidentally, General Jacob was a Jew,
Yeah.
and he selected me as a staff officer. So in the military, it doesn't matter what you are; it is the amount of work you do. He advocated, let's leave all the towns aside and let's head for the heartland of the Pakistan army in East Pakistan, and that was Dhaka. If we
Hmm.
had wasted time in peripheral operations in the border, things may have been different. But no, we attacked the heart of the Pakistan army in Bangladesh, that is Dhaka, and they capitulated in 14 days. So I think it was a great victory. And I think because of the mobility of mind of the commander, the planning put in by our senior generals, especially General JFR Jacob and Field Marshal Manekshaw, we got victory, and 93,000 Pakistani soldiers surrendered to the Indian army. I think this has been the biggest victory of the Indian army so far, and we are very proud of it.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, I have a question. Sort of stumbled upon something which I thought was interesting, which is that about the depiction in the movie Border. Um, And recently, I think there was that movie called Gunjan Saxena, which a lot of people from the Air Force essentially objected against. I'm curious that if social media had existed like prior, I'm curious that having been like if you've watched any Hindi movies or Indian movies in general and gone like that's not what happened, or that's not something that even happens. So, is there any examples of that at all?
Yes. See, the border uh,
Yeah,
gave a lot of dancing and singing and everything else. Uh, it also depicted the commanding officer of that battalion, Punjab battalion, Colonel Khurshid Hussain, who was a close friend of mine, in ambivalent light.
right.
Now, the army felt that was very, very unfair because he gave firm orders to Chandpuri, Mayor Chandpuri, do not withdraw from your post. We are sending reinforcements. The whole division is coming in. Now, as far as Gunjan Saxena is concerned,
Hmm.
it depicted the Air Force. Well, it depicted uh, personal bravery, but it depicted incorrect behavior in officers' messes. And we are not drunkards. Let me tell you, Saurabh, that the maximum out of moderation is practiced by service officers. They do drink, they make merry, but they never get drunk. Why? Because next morning at 5:30 you have to be up at PT parade, unlike a civilian who can sleep till 10 in the morning. And we are chivalrous. We look after women. Nobody would challenge a woman to a panja. I think that's all humbug brought
Yeah.
out by Hollywood and the social media. So that movie has depicted the Air Force and the armed forces in poor light, and I think that should not have been allowed. And of course,
I
the social media feels that the army officers or the service officers are unlettered buffoons, and all that they do is carry a shotgun and go around in breeches and riding boots. No, 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 not at all. Army and service officers are well educated, intelligent, and they know what's happening in the world. Let me tell you, the unfortunate part is that the nation has not made full use of the retired personnel of the army. If they had been made use of, they are a wealth of talent and they should be utilized for the benefit of the country.
I just want to comment, by the way, on one thing, which is that I think the key to a civilian also, I think that should be the rule, is that you have PT parade in the morning at 5:30, which will prevent us also from drinking too much.
Well, that would be the ideal solution to prevent late night binging and getting drunk. No, no. Army officers do everything in moderation. Service
Yeah,
officers, I don't say army
yeah.
officers, do
Service
everything.
officer.
We have a hard life, but we enjoy it. And we do everything, but we do it in moderation.
I'm curious. You said something about retired officers should be used in a better way. What would you suggest? What do you think is something that would? And I agree with you. I'm just curious. What do you think?
They are great administrators. The
Right.
British raised the Northeast Frontier Administrative Service, where they only drafted in army officers. We should have avenues in the central services for sidestepping military officers. Why not? They should go into paramilitary forces. They should command paramilitary forces. Let me tell you that the strength of the Assam Rifles, which is a paramilitary force, is because of the induction of army officers into that force. If the same thing happened in the BSF and the PSC and the other armed police battalions, there would be a totally disciplined force, well disciplined. If they recruit Fauji's who retire very early. A soldier retires with about 20 years service. If he joined when he was 16, he would probably retire at the age of 36. That's the right age for him to join the security services, the police services, and a whole lot of administrative duties. Now, a large number of companies are recruiting uh, short service commissioned officers who've been through IIM, which the Army facilitates, and they get very, very good offers and they do a very good job. So that is how retired officers or service or officers who have left the service very young should be used. Of course, I was singularly fortunate in that after retirement at the age of 60, I served for 3 years in the Armed Forces Tribunal and then for 5 years in as Vice Chancellor of Aligarh Muslim University. So really, and then I wrote a book. So really, I retired at the age of 70. I'm retired just 2 years ago, and I'm very happy about
Yeah, you've led a very busy and very accomplished life. I just want to take a couple of. I just want to see what kind of comments are there here. Please like the stream, guys. If you're enjoying it, please like the stream. Just a couple of. I just want to take a couple of questions, and then I have. I want to actually get forward and talk about you serving in Saudi Arabia. There's just a lot. There's so much to cover with you, sir. I think I'll require 3.5 hours. So I will. I'll just take a couple of questions.
it. I have all the
Uh,
time in the world.
that's very kind of you, sir. Indranil Gokhale says, "What do you think makes Indian military different from other militaries in the world?" Also, another question: What's your opinion on China's lack of quote unquote lack of actual war experience?
Yes. See, what makes our military distinct is the hardiness of the soldiers. They can take privation of any degree. They have no demands. They don't need thermocool suits like the Americans had in the Gulf War. They just need a simple uniform. They need simple food. But what is most important is that they need their families who they have left behind in the rear to be well looked after. This is the main bugbear of service personnel when they're serving in field areas, non-family stations, is that their families are often neglected by the civil administration. They are bullied, their land is taken over by greedy relatives. That is something, if the civil administration ensures, it would mean a more happier soldier. And the second thing I said, besides the hardness and the toughness, is the quality of our officers. We are very motivated and very professional force. Our officers are tough. We participate with the soldiers in all the activities, including the 10-kilometer runs. I, as a commanding officer, ran with the men, and they were quite amazed because I had not put on a paunch. I would run with them, and I capitalized on the assets which I had, and that was physical fitness. So the men love it if you run with them, if you sing with them, and if you participate in all the activities. Now, as far as the Chinese are concerned, they are not a battle hardened nation.
Hmm.
Their last operations was in 1979 in Vietnam, where they got a bloody nose. Vietnam is a small country, but they gave a bloody nose to the Chinese because they were battle hardened. They had defeated the French in Indochina. They had defeated an unbeatable adversary, the Americans,
Yeah.
with thousands of helicopters, basically because of their leadership, basically because of the hardiness of the Viet Cong. Now, the Chinese were given a bloody nose by the Vietnamese because they planned it so well. They allowed the Chinese to penetrate into Vietnam, North Vietnam. This is the border troops were holding the border, and they did a planned withdrawal. When the lines of communication of the Chinese were overstretched, the regular Vietnamese army struck, and they struck so badly that the Chinese army was deprived of logistics and had to retreat and get back into China. That is the policy I've been advocating against the Chinese. They are extremely predictable. They do everything with a lot of forethought, but they're extremely predictable. Now, being predictable in the armed forces is not an asset, it's a liability. What they do, first, they warn you, then they threaten you. If you still don't get browbeaten, they demonstrate. They are at the moment in the demonstration phase in our northeast and the north in Ladakh. They are demonstrating their ability to bring in forces, to concentrated forces at the right time. Then they attack, and then they withdraw. These
Right.
are phases they did in 62. These are the phases they went through against the Vietnamese, and they are the third phase. So we should demonstrate to them that we are capable of defending every inch of our territory. But I would say that the guidelines given, not at an inch of territory should be lost. We should overlook that for some time. I mean, we should do what the Vietnamese did, hold the border with paramilitary forces under the operational control of the army, let them entice the Chinese into killing grounds when the regular army in depth should then strike. Let me tell you, the Chinese are no match for the battle hardened, for the tough and motivated Indian armed forces.
So when you said that that's how we should demonstrate it to them, that's what you meant. This is how we demonstrate to them.
We have to demonstrate that we are capable. We can put up a good fight. It's not a repeat of 1962, where we made massive blunders.
Yeah.
This is a new army. This is a highly motivated army. They are facing a highly motivated nation. They are facing a nation which together is putting its shoulders to the wheel.
So what do you think? Just a completely sidebar on this. What do you think of the whole boycott China goods and all the rest of that?
Well, I think it sent a right message. If
Hmm.
we can withstand the economic uh, backlash of what has happened.
Okay.
I mean, the Chinese have invested massively into Indian industry. They supported the IPL, and when you know what happened when they withdrew. Uh, so we have to be a little careful. But I think it sent right. This is part of the demonstration. It shows to the Chinese, look, if you try and misbehave, this is what we are capable of doing. It's part of the demonstration of our resolve to face the Chinese. I do hope that we do it in a planned manner, but I think there was no way out.
Okay, let's take a couple more questions. I think this is a question that I'm sure you probably heard before, but I think it's interesting to ask this again. D Mo says in the chats, are you proud of GD Bakshi's hate mongering and language? Is it worthy of legendary traditions of Indian Army? Does serving in the front line give one a license to give Ma Behan Gali on TV? That's a question that's coming from D Mo.
I don't comment on brother officers,
Yeah.
but if I was asked to appear, which I've been extremely civil. I've not tried to bully the other panelists. I have not abused. I think if you show a civil face, it carries the message better rather than shouting and other things. That's all I've got to say.
Fair, completely perfect answer. Salman Sabane says, what's sir's opinion on how technology now has changed the warfare and how important data/intelligence is?
Oh, the artificial intelligence is going to be the warfare of the future.
Right.
Artificial intelligence. Uh, Drones are going to be the weapons of the future. You don't need to send a tank in. You know what the Americans did to the chief of the forces in Iran. They
Yeah.
sent a drone and decapacitated him. So technology is all important, and that's why we are laying stress to technology. We are now recruiting men who are earlier unwritten recruits came into the armed forces. They used to put their thumb in their payroll when they received their pay. They were unlettered. Now we are taking class 12. And officers, we are training them in engineering. This is one
Hmm.
of the fields. Computerization, all very important. There is no escape from the technical warfare of the future. We have to be prepared for it, and we are getting ready. We are giving a lot of stress to technology in training officers and men in technological tasks. So I think there's no escape from it.
Wasn't there if I remember correctly reading this, wasn't there some kind of global outcry against using drones in warfare because it used to eliminate Wasn't there something like that happening recently about
Yes,
what?
it was. People called it murder,
Right.
assassination
Hmm.
of an armed force. I tend to agree that drones should not be used for assassinations. Uh,
Hmm.
you know, sort of that the major intelligence we've received about the Chinese build-up and ingress
Hmm.
to our territory was from satellite imagery. It was
Right.
very, very clear. I mean, I formed my impressions on the proof that was projected by of Chinese presence coming into the areas where we were patrolling. So there is no escape from this technology, the warfare, technological warfare of the future.
Okay, so that's the answer you've got, Salman. Thanks a lot for your question, Maya Shinoy. Once again, thank you. Okay, this is an interesting question from Anisha R, who asks, "What is the best way for someone to serve who's not eligible to be part of the army?"
To serve the country,
Yes, sir.
well, the best is, of course, join the armed forces. I asked some people who were debating against me on nationalism and patriotism, and I said, "How many of you have sent your children to the armed forces?" So they all put their hands down. None of them had an answer. Well, I said, "I've got so and so, so and so, so and so." I rattled off all the names. Well, well, you can, as a civilian, you can still serve the country by joining the territorial army. If you join the territorial army, you have a period of embodiment, which is about 2 months a year. Your job is protected, so you can continue. You can be a chartered accountant, you can be a lawyer, you can be an administrator, but you serve 2 months of training in the territorial army. You get a rank as an officer, or if you want to join the ranks, I think that is a very, very good way. Or join uh, the disaster management force.
Okay.
Climate change is going to bring in huge disasters to the country. You've already seen that the pattern of the monsoons have changed. Now you don't get regular rain right through. I'm living in Gurgaon. We've had no rain for the last, in the height of the monsoon season for the last 8 days. But before that, we had 6% above the average rain in one day. And
Hmm.
what happened? The whole of Gurgaon was flooded.
Yep.
So you will have cloud bursts. You won't have rain spread across. You've seen what's happening in America, forest fires all across California, and floods in Florida and Washington.
Yeah.
So these are things that only happen to third world countries. But now, because of climate change, the uh, advanced nations of the world are getting affected, and hopefully that will force them into realizing the importance of climate change. You
Yeah.
can serve your country by doing whatever job you hold. If you do it well with sincerity for the betterment of the nation, you are doing your job to your country.
That's always good advice to say that. Nishtha Chaudhary is asking: Is fighting with a weapon is tempting or a fist fight? What is this question? I don't even understand this question. Is that a question that I don't know if that has an answer? Is fighting with weapon more tempting or a fist fight? Is the question she's asking.
Okay, she's probably referring to what happened in Galwan,
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
where
Possibly. Yeah,
20 of our soldiers were
yeah.
caught. I think it was a colossal blunder
Yeah. Hmm.
uh, to get involved in a fist fight. A soldier has three things which are paramount.
Hmm.
One is his boots, on which he walks and traverses difficult terrain. The next is his belt, in which he holds the necessities of life, his ammunition, his water bottle. The third is his headgear. And of course, the most important is his weapon. These are four things which always accompany a soldier.
Hmm.
And I would have said, if I was in any position, that position, I would have used my firearm, despite all the precautions. If orders don't exist, assume them. That has been my credo. That has been
Hmm.
my motto. This is of the Israeli army, which I learned from General Jacob. If
Yeah.
orders don't exist, assume them. And if you assume them right and in the interest of the country, so use of weapons is always the panacea for resolving disputes with the enemy, not fist fighting. That gets you nowhere, only casualties.
Yeah. So thank you so much for your question, Nishtha. Really appreciate it. Aniket Deshpande just says thank you for your service, sir. Um, Anirudh Agnihotri asks, do you watch Nasir's movies? How do you perceive cinema? What kind of discussions do you have with Nasir? Share some stories of growing up if you can. There's a lot of very interesting stories in the book about in case a lot of you may not be aware is that. Sir is he's your younger brother is Nasiruddin Shah.
I'm elder,
Younger.
but I look younger
Yeah.
because I don't smoke.
Yeah. So you've actually said quite a few times that you're a big fan of his movies and because he's your favorite actor.
Yes, he is my favorite ever because he's the best actor in the country. Nobody can
Yeah.
deny that. He's a
Completely
champion.
agree.
He
Yeah.
can assume the looks and the role of anything. He can be a suave young man, uh, as he did in Masoom, or he can
Oh.
be, an emaciated chap who swims across rivers with his herd of pigs, which he did in Park, and for which he got the Best Actors Award in Venice. I'm a great fan of his. He and I practice the same thing. We practice the arts. He practices the fine arts. I practice martial arts. So that's a slight difference. Anyway, he's always, I've always admired him, and he's always bailed me out. He's always done shows for the armed forces gratis. That means he never takes money for the shows he does. He did when I was celebrating my silver jubilee of my regiment. We raised several thousand rupees for the show which he put up. He put up a show for me when I was retiring. I called several thousand officers to a show which he and his wife and his daughter put up. So I'm a great fan of his. What I've got a grouse against Bollywood,
Right.
and I've told Nasir that. You know what is happening? They're typecasting a particular role of people.
Right.
Early years, they were typecasting the Anglo-Indians and the Christians.
Right.
Every vamp was either Susie or Mary,
Right.
and every bootlegger was John. Now, every crook, every terrorist, every rapist, every wife beater wears a beard and is either Abdul or Kareem. I think it is an incorrect depiction of a community at large. Yes, we've
Right.
got bad elements in every community. You name any community which doesn't have its share of crooks and vagabonds. But depicting one community only being bad, I think is wrong, and which Bollywood is projecting in a very, very big way. And the social media is picking it up and doing the same thing. This is the grouse I have against social media too. They
Hmm.
must depict the better side
Hmm.
of things. I mean, what happens is this hardens attitude, it creates enmity, creates bad blood between the communities. As I say, India is a salad bowl nation.
Hmm.
We are all in this great salad bowl called India, where the lettuce, the carrot, the cucumber, and the pomegranate are all together in that bowl. That means different communities. But we are not churned into a halim. You are in that bowl, but you can recognize the carrot from the cucumber. You know, they are distinct, but they are all living together. So India is a salad bowl country. We are not, like America, where it is called a melting pot nation,
Yeah.
where you have to give up your language, your culture, preferably marry a Caucasian woman to be accepted in American society. No, our strength of our country is unity in diversity, and I'm very very proud of the fact that we've got freedom to practice our religion, We've got freedom to dress the way we want. We've got places of worship. We've got freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and everything else. Another simile I would like to say is that we are like a symphony orchestra. You know, a symphony orchestra comprises of people playing different instruments: a drum,
Right.
trombone, a violin, and all are symphonized into beautiful music. And that is the music India is capable of producing if we live in symphony, if we live in harmony, and we live in peace. So these are the two things which I feel your audience must absorb and inculcate. We are a salad bowl nation, and we are an orchestra in symphony.
It was interesting that you said that one of the first instruments was playing a trump, which is quite interesting in global politics. But I do think, I mean, in defense of Bollywood, I think over the last few years, specifically, that the complaint that you had, I think it's been addressed quite well in a lot of really good movies. I think it's changing specifically over the last few years. There's some pretty good movies coming out which have sort of been very cognizant of ensuring that that particular thing doesn't happen.
Yes, that is essential. That is very, very
Yeah,
essential. It is the cinema is a great opinion builder,
right.
and the way it depicts people, people accept it as the truth.
Okay, so thanks for your question, Anirudh. And we have a question from Balu underscore 2704 who says, can we get rid of dynastical parties slash propaganda makers and bring in qualified people if we have young people in the politics and decentralized power? I'm not sure what that has to do with. Do you want to answer that, sir?
I'll answer that. See,
Okay,
the best way to disembowel, embowel
right.
hate makers
Hmm.
is don't give them publicity. Don't
Right.
listen to them. And they will get starved and disappear. I think
Hmm.
if the more you react to hate,
Hmm.
the bolder they get, and that adds oxygen to the fire. So ignore them. I think that's the best way to treat hate mongers.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to do sometimes.
I
It's
agree.
like
I
they're
agree.
just constantly screaming at you like. So, yeah. Okay, Animesh Kumar asks, I'm an army kid and have friends who are serving. I feel a current lot often speaks against army leadership on social media, causes indiscipline. Your take?
I think we have our share of frustrated people
Hmm.
who feel they didn't get what they deserve.
Right.
So these are the people who speak ill of the armed forces, who shout and yell and everything else. But let me tell you that the vast majority of officers are happy, satisfied, irrespective of what rank they reach. They are a happy-go-lucky lot. They may retire early. Some of them get valuable professions, but a large number of them switch over to golf and playing and look. Also, let me tell you, a large number are in the field of education. I
Right.
myself am involved in educating the underprivileged in a chain of schools which we established after I demitted office from as Vice Chancellor of Aligarh Muslim University. We got a chain of schools in places which never had proper schools, and I must say that our students are really the brightest of the lot. They can compare to the best schools of the country.
Yeah, you've been involved in education for quite a few years, actually. In fact, I mean, we have to come to Aligarh Muslim University shortly, but the number of questions pouring in is quite substantial. So, yeah, again, please do like the stream as well, just to keep things running. And if you've just joined in, do subscribe as well. Rajat Shah 18 asks, Nasir sir had confessed in his memoirs that he was spoiled rotten by their father when he was very little. Does Zameer sir agree? Also, does he too remember a fishbone getting stuck in his throat as mentioned in the memoir? Is that
Yes,
something?
I do remember when I was 6 years old, a fishbone got stuck in my throat and it just couldn't be taken out. We tried, my parents were very concerned and everything else. They said, Pani pio, roti khao, but that stubborn bone would. So then I got so tired, I went to sleep. And when I got up, the fishbone had disappeared. It had gone down the correct channel, but it was torture for three or
Right.
4 hours. Yes, see, Nasir was extremely weak in studies, and that's why the teachers never liked him very much. I was midway between the two, so it was a love-hate relationship. Whenever I did well, yeah, good boy. That's when I come to names. I have a sobriquet I'm called Zoom in the armed forces.
Right. Yes.
It's a sobriquet which I brought in from school. So whenever the teachers called me Zoom, I knew everything is fine. I'm in the good books. If they called me Zameer, it was all right. But if they called me Shah, I knew that spelled trouble. Anyway, so Nasir was constantly being called seldom teddy bear,
Right.
but most of the time Shah. So because he was weak in studies, and that is why he hated that school because the teachers were constantly after his blood and didn't give him a place in the school dramas, which he was thirsting for.
Right.
And that is but it was a wonderful institution and it made men out of us.
It's very interesting. I think there's a photograph of all three brothers standing together, which is I think your elder brother's name is Zahir.
Sahib,
Yeah.
that's
It's a very I don't know if I can find it. It's there somewhere in the book where all three of you are standing together. And you can almost sense the careers.
yes.
Yeah.
Zahir, who was brilliant, he always put first in class,
Right.
cracked the IIT first attempt without any coaching, went off to IIT Kharagpur, and then got a job in the management. He never
Right.
chose the engineering line. Engineers make very good managers too, because
Right.
they understand the functioning. Uh, and army officers make very good managers because they understand human nature.
Right.
Uh, so that is the way. Okay, this interesting book. Now Nasir forever harbored an ambition, a secret ambition, to become an actor.
Yes.
And he told me about it, and I said, "Don't be foolish. You don't have the looks. You're not tall enough." Yeah, he says, "You're old-fashioned." And one fine day, when he was 17 years old, he just ran away from home and disappeared.
Right.
And we didn't know where he had gone. I did, when I searched through, he had sold his bicycle, sold his watch, sold his suits, and with whatever little money he had, he reached Bombay. And there, of course, who would help? He lived with a friend for a few weeks. Subsequently, he slept every night in a factory floor, on a factory floor, where rectangles were marked 6 by 3, and you paid 1 rupee. You spread your blanket on by 6 by 3 square, slept, and before the factory opened, you had to disappear. So you rolled up your bedding. So he went through difficult times, but the education we got, all of us, thank be true to the Lord, did very well in our respective careers. So I always say, when I used to speak to students in AMU, I used to say, discrimination is not against a lot of people. It is
Hmm.
against the less educated. How is
Hmm.
it that three of us got good deals? Well, we got it because of three reasons. One is because of rock solid education. Secondly, we were lucky. And what is very, very important, we had the blessings of our parents. And in blessings of our parents, I include blessings of teachers too, because they take the place of parents. So these three things are very rock solid education, hard work, and blessing of your parents.
Yeah, the education part is by the way, you were saying, sir, that you knew you were in trouble when somebody said Shah. My surname was a lot more jarring when people used to be angry with me in the class, which is just a random teacher saying "pant" in the middle of the class. So that was a slightly different one.
Even in the army, when I was addressed Shah, I knew
Right.
something was wrong because he was addressing me very formally. If he called me Zom, I knew, okay, I was in the good books. So
It,
that's you. So that is why everybody in the army has a pet name. It
right.
is some characteristic of yours which is picked up early in your career, and
Right.
you are called that.
Okay, we have a question from Nivesh Chandra who asks, was there an internal fun banter with Sam Manekshaw as he was from Sherwood? Also, sir, was glad to meet you at the 125th anniversary of St. Joseph's.
No, I only met Sam Manekshaw thrice. Once is when he addressed us just before the war, and secondly, whenever he spoke to us at various institutions of training. So it was a very formal talk we had, but I could not develop any closeness to him. I was close to a whole lot of generals. I would have loved to be close to General Sam Manekshaw. Unfortunately, I never got the chance.
There's also a couple of stories that you actually talk about in this book about I think about his dealings with Indira Gandhi way back then,
Yes,
and yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes. He talked about, Madam. See, firstly, let me tell you that it was because of Sam Manekshaw that the operations into the thrust into East Pakistan, erstwhile East Pakistan, was delayed. Mrs. Indira Gandhi wanted the operation in April, May.
right,
That would have that would have given the Chinese to intrude because the
right,
passes were open. Also, the monsoons would have followed, and our forces would have. It was impenetrable rivers in Bangladesh. He convinced Indira Gandhi that the operation should be delayed to end November or early December. Of course, he writes that he told the Prime Minister, Madam, uh, you don't interfere with my nose and I won't interfere with your long nose. I think that was part of Sam Manishaw's humor. I don't think anybody could have had the audacity to address a very, very assertive and domineering prime minister
right.
in that way. It was part of the fun, which Sam Manekshaw was always party to.
Yeah, there's so many legendary stories about him that I'm so curious. My wife is friends with, I don't know if it's, I think his grandson, and I was like, I just want to get his grandson to know what he was like as a person. Just an interview with somebody who was so close to him. Okay, Chirag Shetty asks, hello sir, thank you for your service to the nation. What is your favorite battle from world history perspective, strategy wise? It's an
Well,
interesting
my
question.
favorite military history is a book by Field Marshal uh, Smith,
Right.
Defeat into Victory. You
Okay.
know, victory is all very well, but when you turn defeat into victory, Field Marshal Slim, he commanded 14th Corps, where my father was a refugee officer in Kohima.
Hmm.
He defeated the Burmese, recaptured Burma, and recaptured the whole of Southeast Asia from the Burmese, from the Japanese. I think that is my favorite story. I recommend all of you read this book, Defeat into Victory by Field Marshal Slim. It is a fascinating book, and you would draw a lot of lessons from that. So that has been my favorite book. His favorite quote was, "Nothing is as good or as bad as initially reported."
Yes, yes, yes.
I
Yeah.
learned that because whenever I got reports, so we've done this, we've done that, whenever it was a good operation. But I always knew that till I visited that place and got the truth, it was probably half the truth which was being told. The rest was, well, showing off. And nothing is as bad. We were committed in an operation in Manipur when I was commanding a brigade. Uh, the insurgents had a whole lot of informers, and one day we decided to follow the Manipur River in a boat. We put a platoon in a boat dressed as civilians, and the boatman we didn't know was part of the insurgent gang. So what he did is he toppled the boat in mid-river. So I got a report, sir, bad news. That platoon, 20 men have drowned. We have lost 30 weapons, radio sets, all ammunition. I says, relax. And sure enough, all our men swam ashore. By
Hmm.
morning, we had counted everybody. We lost 30 weapons. We called in the divers. and they retrieved all their weapons. So remember, nothing is as good or as bad as initially reported, and one look is worth 1,000 reports. Whenever you get a report, see things on the ground. This is management technique. Once you have seen things on the ground, you get the correct perspective. Remember, one look is worth 1,000 reports.
That's a great bit of advice. The book, by the way, is called "By Defeat into Victory." That's BUY,
Defeat
by
into
defeat into
victory.
victory.
Defeat
No,
into victory, Field Marshal Slim.
yeah, no, it's Field Marshal William Slim, book by
That,
William Slim, First Viscount William Slim. It's the same one, right?
Viscount
Yeah,
Slim.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
It's called "By Defeat into Victory: Battling Japan and Burma and India." Is
So
the
that
name of the
must be
book,
an explanatory note. But I have the
right?
book. It's just called, okay, Defeat into Victory.
Okay, probably one of the later editions or
Right.
something like that. I'm definitely going to pick that up. Siddharth says, "Thank you for letting us be part of this great conversation, Saurabh. Hope you can bring more of such guests on the show." I've been following I've been following you, sir, for quite some time, and I've been wanting to get in touch with you for a while. And I knew that this would happen when I saw your email, because I don't want to reveal your email, obviously, but it had Zoom in it, and I'm like, this is great. this is it's a
Yes, the
bec-
Swastika unfortunately has got a Chinese version to it, which I'm told that Zoom doesn't is really not Chinese, it's American.
It's
I'm told.
not. It's not. They have Chinese investors. I think there's somebody who owns about 11% of the company, but the CEO is basically Chinese. I mean, his family was Chinese. He's an American. It's
Correct.
American. Yeah. So. So that's basically what it is. I think, and I love because every time I do this, somebody will comment like, "How can you use Chinese app?" I'm like, please just search for the Google thing that says not a Chinese app. Okay, Imran Ahmad has just given a super chat. Thank you so much, Imran Ahmad. Akhil Pisharodi asks, uh, this is an interesting question. Sir, with Army slash Navy slash Air Force, do we need an IT army, an information technology army?
The an IT army. No, it shouldn't be an army separately.
Hmm.
All the three services should have IT components. The Americans have just raised a U.S. Space Force.
Hmm.
Besides the Army, Navy, Air Force, and the Marines, they've got the fifth arm called the U.S. Space Force. Now that
Yeah.
is dealing with technology. I think we need to have uh, technical components in all the armed forces. That's my answer to your question.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's like make it more seamless that way. Indranil Gokhale asks, sir, what would you say as India's military preparedness between 2004 and 2014 versus 2014 and 2020? Thank you for your service to the nation.
We are far better off. Indigenization, to a large extent, has succeeded. We've got our own aircraft, we've got our own helicopters. We hopefully, of course, we slipped up on the carbine, the
Hmm.
rifle, and we have to import it. But in 2020, the armed forces are far better than what they were in 2004 or 2014. We have to keep modernizing because the Chinese are modernizing, and we can't allow the gap to widen any further. The Chinese have modernized very rapidly. They are expert at reverse technology. They don't do research. What they do is they steal
Hmm.
some
Yeah.
technology and better it. I think the Japanese did that also in the initial stages. So we need to do that because we need to, I won't say steal, but we need to borrow
Right.
technology, improve it, and improve our technological threshold.
So there's your answer. Nishta Chaudhary again asks, what would be the one thing that Sir would like to bring in young generation who are not in the army? So basically, civilians who are just the young civilians is
Well, I would say
basically
the quality which is most important is integrity.
right.
We give it integrity in the armed forces. My God, anybody who violates, and in the civil street also. I mean, we have to have a high personal integrity and make sure that the bribe takers make sure that they corrupt make sure that the people who are taking the country, holding the country at ransom, are obliterated.
Hmm.
So, one singular quality which everybody, the armed forces as well as civilians, should have is integrity.
Okay. So if you'd like to drink some water or something, please feel free.
Yes,
Absolutely.
thank you.
I was just
I'm just about to do that.
yeah. No, because I also need. I was waiting for you to drink some water so I can seamlessly drink my coffee as well. Mm, okay, we have Hiren S who says, "Good job, Saurabh. Keep it up." Shout out from SFO, San Francisco. I assume that means. Thank you, Hiren. Shubhada Mahure says, "Jai Hind, sir. I wanted to know about your opinion on women in armed forces, about how and when we can see them in combat roles, and any advice you'd like to give them as of current times. Thank you."
We are encouraging participation of women in the armed forces. I have a slightly different view.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, the women in combat role would face a lot of hurdles. For example, let me tell you, whenever I went patrolling, uh, which was for many, many days, especially in Pekong Show area and other places, we were man-packed for 10, 12 days. My buddy, the person who was carrying my radio set, he carried the blanket and I carried the sleeping bag.
Hmm.
So we would spread the blanket down and both of us would sleep in the same sleeping bag.
Hmm.
So these are administrative problems which women, if they enter the combat role, would face.
Hmm.
Besides the privacy, which the women do require. They need to honor their, their demands for privacy. So, combat role, uh, I have my opinion, but I'll go with if the girls want to face it, if they think it is no issue, by all means, it is open to you. But let me also tell you that in the U.S. Navy, uh, women are not permitted in the
Right.
submarine because of the problem of privacy. I mean, there are common toilets, common bunks, and everything else, which they don't want a woman to be burdened with these sort of minor problems. So that is one of the things which which I want to point out. But if women want to face it, if they think it is no issue, by all means go ahead and opt for the combat arms.
It seems like something that would be conquerable if you're driven in that direction. I think it seems like I'm sure there are a lot of women out there who are like, that's perfectly fine. I'm willing to do that.
Well, we have women in
Yeah.
the engineers,
Yeah.
which is a combat
Yeah.
arm. We've
Of
got
course.
women
Yeah.
in the air defense, which is a combat arm. We've got women in signals, which is a combat arm.
Yeah. So there you go. That's your answer. And yeah, Not Gate asks, sir, what message would you tell to a boy who's nearly 20, 21, who wants to join army and trying to get into armed forces?
Well, at 2021 is very late to enter NDA.
Yeah.
You join NDA when you are young. We like to catch them young, and then you do your engineering and graduation in NDA. But if you are 2021, my recommendation to you is do your graduation,
Hmm.
preferably with maths and science, and then opt for the Indian Military Academy, where it is only a 2 year course, unlike
Hmm.
NDA, which is a 4 year course. So you'll really catch up. You'll probably miss 1 year on your compatriots, but that is the way. The second way is the Territorial Army, which I've already pointed out. Yes, another way is a short service commission.
Right. Yeah.
Short service commission is for the graduates. If you feel that you're only joining the armed forces for a specific period, it is now 10 years now. Earlier it used to be 5 years. Opt for the short service commission, and then now once you are part of uh, the short service commission, the army will take care to educate you. They'll send you
Hmm.
to IM. They'll send you on various courses. They will
Right.
equip you to pursue a career in Civil Street. That is where it helps.
Sorry, what is Civil Street? Is like this
Well, as a
like
civilian,
civil?
we
Yeah.
call it Civil Street.
Yeah. It's such a weird thing as comedians, when we're hanging out with each other, we call non-comedian civilians, and we happen to.
Oh, that's news to me.
Yeah. I think I was speaking to some people who are doctors, and they said the same thing. So I think this is one of the things that we borrowed from from the armed forces, is
Right.
that we treat like everybody who's not part of this thing as civilians. So it's a big stretch, though. So yeah. Okay, we have a lot of. I think this is the last question that we have, and then we have. Actually, sorry, Notgate has a question which is, would love to know Sir's take on soldiers serving at the Siachen Glacier and movies like Yuri, which have essentially explained the whole concept of surgical strikes.
Oh, our soldiers now are very well equipped, very well clothed, very well armed for service in the Siachen Glacier. Uri, of course, has depicted the hardships the soldiers face. So let me tell you that we are well equipped, we know what to do, and that's all I have to say.
Okay, this is the last super chat question that we have. I think we've caught up with pretty much all of them, which is very rare. Samarth Mahajan says, not sure if this has been asked or not. What are Sir's thoughts on introduction of Chief of Defense Staff? I'm actually not even aware of this, so I'd love to know about this. Yeah.
Chief of Defense Staff is the supremo over the other three services.
Right.
What
Yeah.
we were calling the first amongst equals. I mean, you have the chief of all the three services, and you got a chief of defense staff. This is to ensure integration amongst the armed forces. This is to make sure that they work in symphony. Of course,
Hmm.
integration is the best integration is what we learned in NDA,
Hmm.
where cadets of all the three services were trained together.
Right.
So when we serve once, the best thing to get done, if you want it done, is go to your NDA buddy in the Navy or the Air Force. If you want a courier to Madras, just ask him, is there any courier going to Madras? Go to a course mate, and he'll tell you, do it like this, do it like that. So integration has been built in into the armed forces, but over a period of time, especially when you get senior, there's always a fight for the tight military budget.
Right.
Those are competing. There's sometimes duplication. We've acquired one radio set, the Navy acquires another, which are not compatible.
Right.
Or we plan something in isolation. The Chief of Defense Staff is meant to ensure there's compatibility, that planning is done jointly. And I was a great votary for the Chief of Defense Staff, and I thank the government for having appointed one. It was there in all, you know, commissions of inquiries and everything else, of reviews. They always recommended a Chief of Defense Staff. The government was always shying away from it.
Hmm.
Finally, we got one.
Oh,
In
so it's
General
a,
Zameer.
it's oh yeah, of course. Right, got it. Okay, there's just one last question, and after that, I'd like to one last super chat for now, and after that, the things I want to cover after this is the defense attaché role, which is a very interesting chapter. It's like a very insightful chapter, because in little lines you've said a lot, which is I really enjoyed it. I'll come to that. We also have to talk about the Northeast, and then of course AMU is quite an interesting one. Okay, Indranil Gokhale asks, says last one, Sorabh, I promise. Arey, ask more, yeah, no problems. Don't worry about it. So, how do you discipline the unruly students and politics of AMU? Would love to know. PS, your Hyderabad TED talk is amazing. I also really please go out there and listen to Sir's TEDx talk, which happened at Hyderabad. Very nice talk, very insightful, and yeah. So yeah, he asked the question about how did you discipline the unruly students and politics of AMU?
Well, the first thing as I did, I milled around with them. I joined them. Whenever there's a protest, I used to go talk to them. And there's nothing to be, for a vice chancellor, to be afraid of. And I always gave them a hearing.
Hmm.
I gave responsibility to the badmashes. Once you give responsibility to a badmash, he changes. I was subject to that myself when I was appointed house captain.
I remember reading that.
If the person still doesn't continues to give trouble, gets out of hand, rusticate him. I rusticated the president of the students' union because he just wouldn't listen. He was a constant source of trouble. I found he was misusing the funds meant for the students' union. I rusticated him. There was not a whisper. He thought there would be a revolution in the university. There wasn't even a whisper. And that fellow still cursing me. But I had no choice but to rusticate him and expel him. So unruly students can be disciplined by giving them a hearing, by giving them a patient hearing, resolving their problems. When you can't, explain it why it cannot be resolved. I sorted out a lot of problems in AMU that way.
I'm curious. You said that the students were protesting. What are the kind of things that they were protesting about? Is always something that is interesting to me.
So they would protest about anything.
Right.
Anything. The food, generally, food is bad. So what we did, we got steam cookers. They were the AMU had a tradition of these naans, which used to be cold. So we installed chapati making machines. Then they said, sir, once the chapati started coming out, they said, sir, we wanted naans because we get a stomach ache from chapati. So, so and so teacher is not carrying out classes properly. So
Right.
I didn't get admission in so and so course. I applied for so and so. So or any statement by a politician that we are taking away the minority character of the university, they would be up in arms.
Right.
On any issue, the students are just looking for fun. They want to agitate, they want to show their independence, they want to show that they're adults. So take it with a laugh, dissipate bad blood by humor. That's
Right.
what I did.
Was this something that you learned? Because I mean, it's actually a very unusual thing for a vice chancellor to be like amongst the students. Was there anything interesting that you learned while, as you said, you started sort of being part of their world? Was there anything interesting that you learned where you were like, "Oh, that's interesting. I wasn't aware of this."
When I was appointed vice chancellor, AMU,
Right. Right.
I invited the American ambassador to visit the university. And
Right.
he says, what is a military officer doing in an education institution?
Yeah.
Well, I said, you should have asked General Eisenhower that. Because when he demitted office as the chief of the combined services, he was appointed president, that means vice chancellor in American parlance, of a university in America, which he
Right.
had for 5 years. So he laughed. So I says, we are capable of handling things and we are educated. But the most interesting thing was once the students locked themselves up
Hmm.
in their hostel and the police had surrounded, the police was baying for their blood. So I went there alone and I knocked at the gate. They said, no, Vice Chancellor, we're not going to let you in. And the police was telling me, sir, they're in really bad mood. You are in for a rough deal. They may use third force. So I said, doesn't matter. So finally they said, okay, but we are only allowing you to come in.
Right.
So I walked in. I sat down on the stairs. One of them went running and bought a chair.
Hmm.
And then they were up in arms over some issue. And we had a very, very interesting, a very important examination, all India examination planned for the next day. This was for admission into the medical college.
Right.
It was so very important that I talked and explained. I said, look, you are agitating. If there's no examination tomorrow, your university's name will be in the dust. You will get bad. I motivate them. And by the end of the meeting, it took me 3 hours of convincing. They assured me, this is Vice Chancellor. We will make sure
Hmm.
that tomorrow the exam is held. And what do I see next morning? The same agitators serving water to the parents of the students who had come for the exam.
Wow.
So they had been totally transformed and convinced. So it is a question of getting across to people. This was a very interesting episode.
So do you think that I mean it's actually an interesting thing. Like so, I had a principal in my college, for example, and it was a situation where nobody really nobody exactly respected him because there was a history behind and all that stuff. And eventually, was I think if I'm not mistaken, there was some issues with regard to corruption, which got him behind bars and all that stuff. But do you think that I mean I'm just mentioning my personal experience, it's got nothing to do with what my question is. Do you think that because of your previous history, having served in the Indian Army for so long, do you think that there's a almost like a respect that anyway comes with that, and that's also what makes your life a lot more easier as a that made your life a little bit easier as a vice chancellor?
Yes, most certainly. You know, my
Right.
experience as a soldier, having served more than 40 years in the army,
Right.
taught me man management.
Right.
It taught me to know my subordinates. You know, I always say, know your subordinates better than their mothers.
Yeah.
A difficult task to do, and care for them even more. Now, trying to care for a youngster better than his mother is an impossible task, but you can try and achieve it. So, my experience in the army equipped me in man management, it equipped me in well, general knowledge and awareness of what's happening in the world, and that was invaluable to me in the various hats which I wore. It
Right.
was invaluable.
Okay, there's obviously, I mean, we can't talk about AMU without that one particular. I think there were, in fact, two controversies that happened, which I think you addressed, and I have a feeling that I don't know if you've. I think one of the reasons why I like to do these conversations is because, like, I remember when that whole library situation had happened. I remember even I had tweeted about it, saying, "What the hell?" Blah blah blah. So I'm actually curious about that particular story because I'd love to know what happened. From what I remember was that, and I'm reading just the Wikipedia thing verbatim just to sort of get an idea. General Shah was quoted by the media as saying that there would be 4 times more boys in Maulana Azad library if undergraduate girls were allowed in. He later claimed that his comments were stretched out of proportion. So I'm curious what actually happened in that particular
Yes,
incident. Yeah,
I'll tell you. So
yeah,
in the Aligarh Muslim University, we got a college for undergraduate girls,
right,
and these girls have their own library, but it is at a distance of 3 kilometers from the main university.
right, right.
And whenever they came in, normally it was either cycling or rickshaws, they would be molested by the Aligarh thugs. There was
Hmm.
a lot of purse snatching and chain snatching and everything else. And they always wanted to go out. They were permitted to go out only on weekends, but they
Hmm.
wanted an excuse to go out. So their constant refrain was allow us into the main library, which was already overcrowded.
Right.
And one day during one of the functions in the college, women's college, the girls against, so in a jocular mood, I said, I won't permit you because if I do, there'll be 4 times more boys. Now that was taken as a sexist remark.
Right.
This was purely as in light humor. And I said,
Right.
I am not going to permit you. The HRD minister took umbrage
Right.
and she says, you have insulted my daughters. And I was interviewed. The whole of the media descended on AMU. But let me tell you, Sorabh, undergraduate girls are not permitted in the Delhi University Library. They are not permitted in the Bombay University Library because the university libraries, these colleges have their own. Miranda House girls cannot go to Delhi University Library.
Right. 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 Yeah.
They have their own library. And in any case, library books from the main library were available online. You just had to demand online, and the book would be delivered to you.
Right.
So I faced a lot of flack. And then I was directed, no, no, you will permit. So we said, all right. So the first Sunday, we bussed in the girls. We kept control, but 8 girls turned up to go to the library. Second Sunday, 4 girls turned up, and third Sunday, not a single volunteered to go to the main library. So, so I felt Karan Thapar interviewed me at
Right.
length on this issue. And I told him, Karan, you know what a simile is? He said, of course, General Shah. I know what a simile is. I've studied English. Well, I said, I used it as a simile. When I say it's raining cats and dogs, does it mean that it's going to rain cats and dogs? No, it means
Right.
heavy rain. So I said, I used it similar way. It's like a simile. I say, if I
Yeah.
allow you, there'll be 4 times more boys. And
Right.
said in humor, I have been a great believer in dissipating tensions through humor, but it was misconstrued. But I got it.
So, why do you think? Why do you think like so few undergraduate women actually came to the library after you allowed that change?
Because they were busted. If we had permitted them to come on their own, they
Right.
wanted freedom. They wanted to get out of the
Right.
college premises. If we had allowed them to use their scooties, they would have gone all over the city, shopping and doing everything else. But I'm aware of the 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 criminal elements in the town,
Yeah.
and it was my duty to protect my students.
Hmm.
So when they found they're being bussed to the library, they lost the urge to go there, and they had their own library.
I have a couple of follow-up questions about this. There's also I don't know. There's a whole list of controversies of you as a vice chancellor of
Yes,
AMU.
yes.
Yeah. So there's
Saurabh,
yes, sir.
anybody who's in controversy, it means he's doing his work.
Right.
I could have slept through my tenure of 5 years without doing anything, and I've been a pretty good vice chancellor with
Right.
no trouble. No, but my aim was to make Aligarh Muslim University the #1 university of the country, which we did
Right.
in the
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
academic year 2016-17. Times Higher Education London and US News and World Report graded Aligarh Muslim University as the #1 university of the country.
Yeah. I remember reading that.
So
Yeah.
these controversies were part of change. The main resistance to change is trying to get the old idea out.
Hmm.
When you're bringing change, the most difficult part is to get the old idea out and putting in a new idea. So whenever I was trying to put in a new idea, there would be controversies, there would be fights, there would be the students' union would rebel, the teachers' union would be up in arms, but that didn't bother me.
So one of the statements here says that Lieutenant General Shah also attributed the backwardness of Muslims to keeping the women quote unquote enslaved and not working during Ramzan. That's something that's on the Wikipedia thing. What I
Yes,
don't even remember. What is that about?
yes, I did. People were complaining about the backwardness of Muslims and
Hmm.
how nobody was there in the central services, nobody was there in the army, the police. And
Hmm.
so I said, look within your own self. My reading of the whole thing of history is that any civilization that enslaved its women itself got enslaved.
Right.
I'll repeat, any civilization that enslaved its women itself got enslaved. For example, starting from Niger in West Africa to the Philippines in East Asia, we were all colonized except for one country, Ethiopia and Iran. These are the only two countries which were not colonized. Rest, the whole of Africa and the whole of Asia had been colonized, except, yes, basically because we had enslaved our women, we didn't allow 50% of the workforce to join in modernization. So I said, don't enslave your women,
Hmm.
educate them. I said, that is one of your problems. So I got into a lot of flack from my own community, but that was the bitter truth. And I'm afraid, I'm very happy to say that change is coming. And the best students of AMU were our girl students. 80% of the medal winners were women students. So we have a bright future if we educate our women. If we enslave them, the future is very dark.
Yeah. It's interesting about so I think the HRD minister at the time, I remember reading this interview, was Smriti Irani, who was, I think, basis a couple of her interviews, was not a fan. Do you think in this entire experience, do you think, like, I mean, having gone through this, do you think that the way the media functions, and actually in general social media functions right now, is that we want to assume the absolute worst in a person on the basis of something that we've heard from another source, as opposed to having a conversation or attempting to listen to them?
Sorry, nothing sells as good as a crime or
Right,
as good as what they perceive wrongdoing.
right,
So they try and see everything in the light of wrongdoing and highlight it so that they get TRP ratings.
right.
And that is unfortunately what the media is doing, and they should, but it's very difficult. They will always, why do you think all these starlets are getting so much publicity? Because of some perceived wrongdoing on the part of actors and something else. So I think the media needs to change and bring out the positive aspects of human beings.
Okay, so that's the last controversy in this whole thing was he stoked another controversy after Math the Maulana Azad library issues by banning the Times of India, the university campus, which reported about the library issue at the first hand. Any truth to that?
Yes, what happened was the Times of India, the reporter
Right,
somehow took a intense dislike for me, personal dislike,
right,
and for a moment I got carried away and said, "Okay, we will not subscribe to Times of India in our libraries." I think it was a mistake.
right,
You cannot ban the media. Why? Because if you ban something, for example, why did satanic verses become so popular?
right.
Salman Rushdie's book. Because Ayatollah banned it.
Yeah, yeah,
I read it to find out what are the reasons for banning it.
right,
So one of the if you give oxygen to something is to ban it. So anyway, I made a rapprochement to Times of India. I says I didn't mean it. We resumed supplies, and that was the end of the controversy. And
right.
that correspondent started writing very positively about AMU and
So again, AMU, there's something that I'm actually kind of curious of. I don't know how much time you have, sir, so I'll try and wrap this up.
you
Yeah.
can keep asking.
Okay, so I had a question. I think you were. I've completely forgotten who the lady who was interviewing you about AMU being a
Not
minority.
easy.
Yeah, what does that? What does that mean, though? What does that like? I'm curious about, like, so IIT BHU is a Hindu university, and so Aligarh Muslim University is a Muslim university. What does that mean, though? What does that?
Means nothing. I'll tell
Right,
you why it was named Aligarh Muslim University.
right,
It was in 1920 when
right,
Aligarh Muslim University was upgraded from a college into a university. At that point of time, the Muslim community were very apprehensive about educating their girls, or sending their students to an institution where academics was in English. So to well, generate positive thoughts. This is
hmm,
don't be afraid. This university is called Aligarh Muslim University. That means it's a modern university with a Muslim ethos, same as
right,
Banaras Hindu University. It was to, encourage people to
hmm,
send their students.
right,
Now, so when people tell me that there needs to be a change in name,
hmm,
I said, why?
hmm,
There is always something in a name. There are traditions, there are paths which you follow. I spoke about the regimental system.
yeah,
This is part of what I learned. I said, we are not going to change it.
yes,
But let me clarify a few things about AMU.
right,
It is not totally a Muslim university.
hmm,
Admissions to Aligarh Muslim University are through open competitive examinations for students of all communities.
yes,
Of course, why is the strength of Muslims more?
hmm,
Is because that subjects like Urdu, Farsi, Arabic, Unani medicine, which are the backbone of the university, are only subscribed by Muslim students.
Right.
So what can I do about it?
Hmm.
But medicine,
Hmm.
engineering, management, and everything else, the ratio is roughly 50-50% of Muslims to non-Muslims. I say again, it is not a university solely for Muslims. It is open to students of any religion, any community.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about this a lot. Where I'm like, if a religion is tied into a educational institute, that's a positive thing. I mean, in the it's effectively religion using its this thing for positivity, whether it's Banaras Hindu University or a convent school or whatever it is. It's like as long as you're sort of
Absolutely.
putting on education, I
So
think
when
that's a
they
good
said
thing.
take it Aligarh University, I said over my dead body. It will remain Aligarh Muslim University till I am Vice Chancellor.
Okay, we have a question from I think where's this gone? I think Indranil Gokhale asked a question. Where's the question gone? Sorry, sir. Just give me a second. I have misplaced the question. Um, Indranil Gokhale asked, "Sir, you've met PM Modi. What's your opinion on him as a person and a PM? Also, do you think PM's visits to Ladakh acted as a morale booster?"
I think the PM is a first-rate leader. I'll tell you why.
Sorry, the first. Yeah.
First-rate leader.
Okay.
They are, the Rand Corporation conducted a review of the great captains of war,
Hmm.
right from the time of Julius Caesar to the time of Eisenhower. They listed all their individual qualities. They all had differing qualities. Somebody was a womanizer, somebody was going to brothel, somebody was doing this, somebody was doing that. But there were two strings or two threads which were common to all. One was they all had great memories. And secondly, they were all great orators.
Right.
I think PM Modi has both.
Great memory and great orator. That's
He
interesting.
is a great orator. You can't
Yeah,
deny that.
absolutely. Completely agree. Yeah.
And he met me after 13 years. After I met him in 2002 and I met him in 2015.
15. Yeah. Yeah.
He remembered my name. He said, Shah Sahab, किधर थे आप 13 साल से? So I was a little taken aback.
Hmm.
And he has met me twice or thrice. He has never failed to put his hand on my shoulder and talk to me. His other characters, when he was to, when there was a question of he is likely to become prime minister, the press
Hmm.
asked me, they says, do you have any problems if he becomes the prime minister? I said, why should I have problems?
Hmm.
Haven't you read British history? Where the Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Becket,
Yeah.
was anointed Archbishop by Henry II in 1150 AD.
Right.
Why? Because he wanted to get hold of the church. He said, if I appoint my friend as the Archbishop of Canterbury, he will facilitate my control of the church. But the moment Thomas Becket was anointed Archbishop, he felt that his loyalty was to the church
Right.
and not to the king.
Right.
So, the same way, Prime Minister Modi, as the Chief Minister of Gujarat, had made several statements against various religions and everything else.
Right.
But after assuming the office of Prime Minister, he has never
Hmm.
made those statements. He has refrained. In fact, he has always said, I want to project myself as inclusive. I want to take the whole country along and
Hmm.
such things. Of course, there has been trouble, there have been communal riots, but those were from other participants. I
Right.
don't think the Prime Minister encouraged this sort of thing.
Hmm.
So, the Urdu press got after my blood. They said, you are becoming a Sarkari Musalman. Now you're currying favors with the Prime Minister. I said, nothing of the sort. I'm just telling you a lesson which I learned from history, and that is Thomas Becket. That means I said, I feel that once Mr. Modi becomes the Prime Minister of the country, he will be Prime Minister of the whole of the country. He'll be Prime Minister of all the people of the country and not Gujarat and not a section of the people. I think I was right in that.
I mean, since we are on this particular topic, I think I remember reading an interview of yours where you said that the sort of stopping a riot or communal riots from happening is really detrimental to the psyche of a soldier, if I'm quoting
Yeah.
you correctly. So I'm curious about. I mean, you've spoken about this before, but I would love to ask you again about sort of that entire experience with the 2002 riots, where you guys, you and your entire team basically stopped the riots. I'm curious about the experience there and how it was detrimental to your psyche and all the rest of that.
Well, we were sitting in a place called Agulai, that's on the
Yeah.
western border, getting ready to launch a thrust into Pakistan after they attacked Parliament.
Yeah.
And on the night of 1st November, I get a call from the Chief of Army Staff.
Yeah.
First March 2000.
March. Yeah,
First
March. Yeah.
March 2002. It was very unusual for the Chief of Army Staff to address a division commander because he's got an army, he's got a
Right.
corps, and then the division. But I knew him since I had worked as a staff officer in insurgency in Punjab. And he says, Zom, get your division into Gujarat and sort out the riots immediately. I said, sir, but it'll take me 2 days to reach from where we were in Agulai, beyond Jodhpur. He said, don't worry, the Air Force will look after that. So the Air Force put in 60 sorties that night.
Right.
We put in 3,000 troops. When I took the first aircraft and when we were approaching the Ahmedabad airfield, I found the city aflame. There were fires burning all over the city. The airport was dark, deserted. I'd been assured that we should be travel light, carry only our personal weapons and our beddings. So I had taken the precaution of taking my vehicle with me, my gypsy,
Right.
and my ADC and my communications. So we landed at Ahmedabad airfield. Not a soul to welcome us except for one brigadier of the lodger formation. He was the deputy. So I said, where are the vehicles? Where are the police guides? Where are the maps? Where are the radio sets? He shrugged his shoulders and said, the civil administration is doing that.
Right.
So I had no choice but to go to Mr. Modi's house at 2 a.m. on 2nd of March. I landed up at his residence. To my relief, the Raksha Mantri, Mr. George Fernandez, was there. They were having, at 2 a.m., they were having breakfast. So they invited me. I partook of. I was hungry. I pointed out, I had a tourist map because maps were to be provided to me. And so we pointed out where the troops were to be deployed. And then I said, sir, we need vehicles. So everything was, yes, we'll get it. So I went back. The 60 aircraft brought 60 flights, brought in 3,000 troops, but no sign of any aid from the civil administration.
Right.
Waited the next day, the Raksha Mantri came to the airport, addressed the troops. I again pointed out, next morning, the vehicles and everything came. The whole city was in the midst of terrible riots, terrible arson. And our orders were, any arsonist, shoot him. So we shot up a couple of arsonists, and that I found the police not doing anything to quell the riot. When we shot up these, the message got home, the army is here, and that the riots abated in 48 hours. What 140 companies of paramilitary forces and police could not do, 24 companies of the army achieved in 48 hours. The problem, why isn't the paramilitary and the police, why do they take sides in a riot?
Right.
Because they're part of that community. They live there. The army is not.
Right.
That is why I am against prolonged deployment of the army in resolving these riots. Because the troops will get infected.
Right.
I mean, we were there for 4 months, but we kept the troops insulated and isolated, except whenever there was trouble. It is human nature. You
Hmm.
get infected by the communal virus, and the army should seldom, if ever, be called in to resolve communal riots. It is really the job of the paramilitary and the police. That is why I am against prolonged deployment of the armed forces in quelling riots.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's got to be tough having to show up in like your own country to find like your own countrymen fighting against each other,
It's,
and
you know,
it's
the most difficult part of insurgency where I've been right through my career
yeah,
is fighting your own countrymen.
right,
You know, in normal operations, you have a uniformed enemy, you have a uniformed adversary under his own flag. But here you are killing your own countrymen.
hmm,
You are fighting, you don't know who's an insurgent, who's an ordinary civilian. And
yeah,
that's why I'm a proponent for the Armed Forces Special Powers Act.
right, yeah,
This is a question which is always put up to me and
yes,
say, no, no, it should be abolished. And so, if you abolish it, you will be tying the hands of the armed forces behind their back. They will not be able to resolve insurgency problems
hmm,
because everybody talks of human rights of civilians, of the people in that area. What about human rights of the soldier?
hmm,
He also has human rights. Why
right,
should we lose life of soldiers? And a soldier must not should not be handicapped by not taking action against rioters or against insurgents just because he's scared that he'll be dragged into a court or be accused of murder. No,
right,
the soldiers, but the armed forces need to be tweaked a little to ensure that there's no misuse of the powers.
yes,
That is certainly very important, and it is for the senior commanders to ensure that there's no misuse of powers. I mean, I would never tolerate a civilian being hit with a stick or a house being burnt. No, no, no. That's against the ethos, military ethos. We've got to respect civilians. And I would say it's better to let a terrorist escape rather than killing an innocent civilian at all.
right.
It should never be done. So that is my take on the Armed Forces Special Powers Act.
Okay, we have okay. I think this is the last super chat. So you've been very, very generous with your time. I genuinely appreciate it. You've answered pretty much all the questions, which is quite incredible. Um, I uh, I think there's just two questions left, and that's about it. Rahul Verma asks, sorry if it's a bit inappropriate, but what is Sir's opinion on the word Hindustan, as by name it somewhere represents a nation of Hindus?
It, it's a Persian word, Hindustan,
Yeah,
the land of the Hindus. But Hindustan means India.
right,
Hindustan means a salad bowl. Hindustan means an orchestra and symphony. It is a land of various unity in diversity. It's a land of all people. And if somebody tells me to Pakistan, I take umbrage to that sort of nonsense.
right.
I come back very strongly on people who tell me, who try and tell me such nonsense. I says, I have as much right on this country as you. I was born
Yes,
here. I fought for this country. So don't teach me what to do. This is my country. You go and somewhere else. You go to Canada or America or Australia. Why should I leave?
yeah.
So Hindustan means country for all of us.
So there's your answer. Just Nishtha Chaudhary again asks, what is Sir's opinion that if some riots are a big conspiracy and not just for justice? Not sure.
Riots it is my conviction that riots cannot happen without a political signal.
Right.
Riots will always happen if there's a political go ahead.
Hmm.
And riots can be quelled if the politicians want it. If they have a resolve, it can be quelled in 24 hours. There's no reason why riots should prolong, provided the right signal is given to the police, provided the right signal is given to paramilitary, and as a last resort, if the army is committed, they don't need any signal. They know what to do. They know how to act and act with resolve and with all
Hmm.
fairness.
Yeah, Maya Shenoy, by the way, says very interesting point on AFSPA. I do not support AFSPA, but I agree with the practical point by Lieutenant General. Okay, there's a question from Balu2704 who asks, is the current COVID situation a global conspiracy? That's something that's been doing the rounds for the last couple of days, especially with that lady who said that she has proof that it was manufactured in a lab, which I'm not sure what the update on that is, but yeah.
Well,
But what do you think, sir?
President Trump calls it the Chinese virus.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I really am not equipped to answer
yeah,
this sort of question. But all I would say is that we've got to be careful. We've got to carry on with life.
yeah.
Take precautions, stay safe, don't intermingle in a crowd. Play games by all means. I play golf and I used to play tennis and I used to play polo and a whole lot of swim, you name it, skiing and everything else. So don't endanger yourself by getting into a crowd, attending functions, religious functions. All those should be taboo.
Right,
Keep aloof, keep within your family. The COVID-19 has not affected me. I've caught up with a lot of pending work,
right.
caught up with my reading, and now I'm catching up with my golf. I'm getting quality time with my grandchildren, my grandchild, with my wife, and my my children. So it really makes no difference to me. But
So
I
this,
cannot
yeah,
comment whether it's a global conspiracy.
yeah. I don't. I think it's a hard thing to comment about because I don't think most of us have enough information in any case. Um, Okay, Maya Shinoy. Okay, she's already there. Okay, sir, thank you so much for your time. You've spoken for a little over 2 hours. You've been very generous and you've been very upfront and spoken about everything that I've thrown at you. So I really appreciate your time. This is the book which I just read, which I'm in the middle of finishing, The Sarkari Musalman. I think it's available on pretty much Amazon and Flipkart. And very intimidating photograph at the back, sir. Just, just to. So please go ahead and buy it, and please follow sir on all. I think you're on Twitter. I don't think you're on Instagram and the rest, but you're definitely on Twitter. Please follow sir there. So thank you so much for your time. If you'd like to say anything at the end, I'd love to hear anything from you to viewers or
Yeah,
whoever.
yes, sir. Thank you very much. Firstly, I'm very impressed at you're very widely read and you got interest in everything else. Uh, let's work together for our country. We are going to be a great power if all of us work together. If we are divided into various communities, various religions, if they strive in the country, I'm afraid that path cannot be taken. Uh, you must contribute towards the security of your country. Join the armed forces, encourage your children to join the armed forces. And if you want to have any difficulty in getting the book, let me know. I'll help you where to find one. It is also available online. It is, but the best way is through Flipkart and Amazon. Uh, I wish you strength, Saurabh. I
Thank you so
wish you
much, sir.
more fruitful interviews. And all those people who are watching, thank you for listening. Stay healthy, stay safe, and Jai Hind.
Thank you,
God
sir.
bless you.
This has been an absolute pleasure. I genuinely enjoyed this conversation. It was I mean, there's still a lot left. I definitely want to talk to you about the Northeast and the defense attaché, but we'll save it for another time. Hopefully, I'll have you back. And there's so much of your career still left to cover. Whether it's the whole Gulf region, all those stories are tremendous. So. Thanks a lot, sir. Really appreciate your time. And please go out there and buy the book Sarkari Musalman in the midst of it again, as I said, and very interesting. Thank you, sir. You can You can turn off your this thing. I'm just going to announce a few things which are coming forward. Um, Super. Thanks a lot for everybody who's been watching. I really appreciate it. A lot of you guys given super chats. Genuinely appreciate it. Nishta Chaudhary gave multiple times. Maya Shenoy, Indranil Gokhale, bunch of you who gave on super chats. Really, really appreciate it. Couple of things I'll tell you what's coming up next. Tomorrow is just silly fun times. I'm getting three people who are really fun and silly people. We're going to talk about the most nonsensical news we've read over the last week or so. So there's going to be Sorabh Ghosh, Siddharth Dudeja, and Sumaira Sheikh. It's going to be a fun one tomorrow at 11 o'clock in the morning. On Tuesday, we're doing our IPL thing. And this time, it's actually going to be about the IPL because I have three people who are actual IPL fans. Jamie Alter is going to be there, who you guys may know as Tom Alter's son. And also, he's got his own YouTube channel, which is a lot of fun. And Nishant Suri is going to be here, who's a ardent cricket fan. And third person we'll figure out soon. Again, Thursday is Chetan Bhagat, which is going to happen at 11 o'clock. That's going to be a solo. I think he's got a new book coming out as well. And then we continue pretty much Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. William Dalrymple is also coming, I think, on Sunday. Next Sunday is William Dalrymple. And Saturday, I've forgotten who it is. I'm sure it's somebody good. I just may have forgotten. Again, you can support this podcast on Instamojo and PayPal. The links will be in the comments and in the description below. Probably the pinned comment. We also have a separate channel which has snippets on it, which needs to be updated more regularly than it currently is. Membership has also started. Lots of members in the chat. Harshit and Akhil Pisharodi and Jayesh Tripathi, all sorts of fun people. You can sign up for memberships. There's level 1, which is just the most basic one, which gets you emojis and badges. Level 2, which is gets you one YouTube live with members. I have a feeling that I'm probably going to do more than one. We already did the first one, which is yesterday. I have a feeling I'll probably do one more in that. I'm going to try and get comedians, friends of mine who keep coming on a regular basis. I think the next one for members only is going to be just me and Kumar Varun talking to you guys. I'm going to ask him whenever he's free. And level 3 is basically for besties, where you get minimum of 2 open mic nights a month, over and above all the rest of the stuff that I mentioned. We have the second open mic for this month happening on Monday at 8 p.m. I think Azim is already on. There's going to be a bunch of young comedians and some of my close friends who are comedians also testing out new material. So go out there and sign up for the membership, guys. I really appreciate you guys watching. I will see you guys tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, where it'll be a Matsiliya chat. By the way, big thanks to Lieutenant General Zameer Uddin Shah. Please go out there and buy his book. It's very interesting. And he was very generous with his time and very easy to coordinate with, and just a nice man overall. So thanks a lot for coming, sir. And I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye. Thanks a lot for watching. And please like the stream, guys. Like the stream if you haven't yet, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet, so we can keep making all this stuff that you guys enjoy, and keep putting in the comments who you